The research made clear the psychological impact of separation and the lack of attention given to parents' needs following discharge from hospital. We will now hear how some of our practice partners have implemented new approaches to offer more support to parents at this most distressing time.
In terms of the post-birth plan, obviously the model is relationship-based practice, so that there's never a referral or a transfer point at any point in the work from the pre-birth team. So from the point of the referral coming into the team, that social worker is the same social worker from then until the point of case closure, when we've finished working with the family, whether that's at the end of proceedings and permanency decisions being made, or whether that's at the end of kind of a baby being born and being supported. So the intervention plan does continue post-birth.
Our practice partners in the North East work together to develop new birth arrangement forms which place an increased emphasis on the wishes and choices of parents as well as safeguarding the baby.
So previously our birth arrangements forms were very much focused on what happens in the hospital. We didn't have the detail around kind of parents' wishes and feelings, parents' choices, what happens in terms of offering that support to parents during that process, pre a baby being removed, during the process and after that process as well. So obviously the guidelines that have been produced, when we kind of looked at that, we felt the birth arrangements form was something where we'd be able to really implement them guidelines a lot more thoroughly.
We were able to develop the birth arrangements forms that's going to be used consistently between not only the three authorities that were involved, but that's going to be spread out more widely across the region. So we have a consistent regional approach to pre-birth forms.
We develop the forms alongside health as well, so it's kind of done as a joint document. The first part of the form covers an early alert to midwifery, so they're very clear around what the issues are. The form does cover kind of parents' experiences and traumas as well, so if there is any issues that need to be shared, a parent isn't having to kind of repeat their story over and over, so we're very clear in the form about what that experience of that parent's been. The second part of the form is kind of explaining what the plan is for baby. Is baby going to be in parents' care? Is the baby not? Who's going to be supervising if supervision is needed? We really involve extended family members and family networks in that as well to make sure that we've got that really robust supervision and support if that's needed, and it's not a reliance on health services or social workers to kind of step in and do that. Through the forms, a lot of it is around, as I say, parents' choices, their wishes and feelings, asking them what they're most comfortable with during that process. If a baby is going to be removed, the alternative care form details exactly how that is going to happen, so a parent knows exactly who's going to be there and what's going to happen in the detail around that, so there isn't any kind of surprises.
There were a few team managers and social workers who gave some really positive feedback. Not that it was necessarily filling the form in, they were using that as an intervention tool to engage.
The details around their wishes and feelings covers things like who they're going to hand the baby to, who do they want to be present when that happens. Obviously a social worker being there can be extremely traumatic. It might be that actually they want to hand the baby to the midwife when they're saying the goodbyes, and that's a kind of process for parents during that really traumatic experience.
I think that another impact of them has been around our out of hours EDT service. So them having that level of detail, if a baby, if a mum goes into labour over the weekend, it's just so clear. In the past, that before the team, the feedback was, it was always very dramatic if a baby was born on a weekend, because things weren't, the level of detail wasn't on the case file, and in that birth arrangement, having that level of detail, it's so much easier for them. And we make sure that 2 weeks before any baby's due, we will send an information only to our out of hours service on the Friday, so they've got that, so they know that baby could come any time, and we're just letting them know that's again about that communication between different parts of the services.
I work within the Jigsaw team, and we're very fortunate in Swansea because the Jigsaw team is a multi-agency team of midwives, nursery nurses and parenting workers. And we co-located with social services, so we're ideally placed. And our cohort of women are all women with complex social factors. For mothers having a baby removed, baby'd be taken what they thought they were doing the best straight away, isn't it? So now even though it's a very busy unit and, the bed occupancy is high and mothers are in and out, the senior midwifery management team have really taken these guidelines on board for mum to stay a little bit longer. So I think that's a really a big achievement.
And just allowing parents to have more time to be able to be together before going to that court process, where we might have initially have gone to court potentially that day baby was born a few years ago, whereas now having a better relationship with the ward staff and then being on board and sharing the same values as us, because I think, you know, they do see what we are seeing, we're on the same page.
We've had to think about where we've had to manage sometimes still that risk in order to promote those plans. We have had to develop, or in the process of developing, hospital rotas now. So whereas before we would rely always on family members to be there, and if they couldn't be there to support, maybe, you know, to manage that risk, we would sometimes not be in a position then where we could support that. Whereas now now we come from a place of we need to have people there for this amount of time, so we utilise our own resources internally with our staff, if we haven't got family, to make that happen. So I think that's something that we've done very differently, following on from the guidance.
We had a real kind of joint goal, didn't we, that actually, as a starting point, it's really unfair that if the baby can't go home, that the baby has to go to neonatal, and that's just what people do, and it just felt really inhumane to us, didn't it? And we had this joint goal of that's the first thing we're going to change, and we're just going to change it. We're going to be really bold, and we're going to just do it and say, actually, no babies in Sunderland go into neonatal for a social care issue. And the response to that has been really fantastic, hasn't it? And actually, it's allowed the social workers and me as a manager to think much more creatively, the maternity staff to think, to accept that more creative practice, be a little bit less kind of worried about the risks of people, and just recognise the safety within the ward, that it was really an over the top process, and I think I've been really proud of that we've achieved within Sunderland.
It was a massive impact on the service, because if we were putting a well healthy baby into our neonatal unit, or potentially up onto our paediatric ward if we didn't have the capacity on the neonatal unit, that was totally separating parents and almost needlessly, but the impact on the neonatal unit and on the paediatric ward was massive. So if they took one of the safeguarding babies, they potentially couldn't take a really sick baby and we'd have to ship our poorly babies out. So just by having those conversations with Natalie and making a joint decision that wasn't going to happen anymore, and actually parents can look after their baby on the ward, and with the right support network around them, that was the way we were going to go. And almost overnight we did it, didn't we? And changed the way that we did things.
In terms of, you know, innovation and thinking things differently, before we always would have gone, it would have been, it came in, you know, we decided we were going to issue, and then we were going to issue on birth. So as soon as that mum gave birth to that baby, where the plan was for removal, we would be making the application. Everything would be lined up, ready to go, and we'd probably be in court sometimes that day or the next day. We are not doing that now. You know, yes, I'm not saying that there aren't exceptions where we may need to do that, depending on the risk that we have to manage. But I think because of those relationships and because of the way we're working, parents, even knowing that might be the plan, are working with us because they recognise that they will have that opportunity to stay in hospital. And I think we had a recent example, didn't we, where the mum, and she's, you know, this is repeat proceedings for her, what she reflected on, wasn't it, was it did just make such a difference. Even though it was sad, even though it was heartbreaking knowing what was coming, she was really grateful for the time that she had with her baby in the hospital.
I've been involved with the Born into Care research, and on the back of that we developed the implementation of some hope boxes for women and families and their babies. And it was brought about through the Born into Care research because we had women sitting on that panel, and what they were saying was that they weren't recognised as mothers. They left the hospital with no baby and no support, and they just went, and that was it. And it made a traumatic experience much worse. So women have decided what goes in the boxes. They're called hope boxes because that means hold on, pain eases. The women chose that name, and they've chosen the items with love for other women to support other families that are in that position.
We need to sort of explain to our staff on the unit about how to use these properly. We don't want to, oh, here's a box, you're having your baby removed. This is a process. So I think it starts with a letter saying, you know, other mums found this beneficial, and then we put little things in there that we think will help. So a toy that both can have, maybe a blanket, and we encourage these to be swapped at contact so the smell can be there. And keeping a diary, and when the baby, or if the baby went to foster care, that the foster mum keeps a diary, you know, when I woke up this morning, I took 2 ounces from my bottle, and I had a bath, you know, just those nice things. And the lived experience mothers found that really, really helpful.
That point of separation is just very brutal sometimes. So the hope boxes were implemented to try and make that traumatic experience, to reduce the trauma at that point of separation, to try and give something positive. And the feedback from women is that it's really been helpful. At that time, it's only an interim decision. The baby may come back to the family. So it's to keep that link, because as well, what sometimes happens, after they're separated from the baby, the parents lose hope, they disengage, they stop going to family time because they think they're never going to get the baby back, and then it all goes. So something positive hopefully will help that process. Following on from the hope boxes, we looked at the process of when the parents and the baby are separated, and sometimes that's a very difficult process because it usually takes place on the postnatal ward, and we've had times when there's been a meeting, then the baby's going with the foster carers, parents are going home, we're trying to get the baby out without bumping into the parents, and it's just been a real negative experience for the parents first and foremost, but also for the staff. So again, we spoke to local women, and we've identified a room at the hospital. In it, there's a computer where they can do the virtual court hearing, and then they can stay in that room with the baby. They can bath the baby, have skin-to-skin contact with the baby, and hopefully have some quality time with the baby before that separation takes place.
For more information about the Giving Hope project and the Hope Boxes implementation, please follow the link below or email Claire Mason at c.mason@lancaster.ac.uk.
When it is separation at birth on them occasions as well, you know, a lot of the time, particularly if there is positive family or friends where the children can go to, I would often give parents the kind of the choice to make with if it's myself that takes the baby there, or does it want to be the family member that does that. So they have that element of control as well about who goes with the baby, and it's kind of things like that I think parents have really appreciated, having that element of control as well.
The research made clear the psychological impact of separation and the lack of attention given to parents' needs following discharge from hospital. We will now hear how some of our practice partners have implemented new approaches to offer more support to parents at this most distressing time.
The biggest change that we made was the post-separation support for parents. So previously in social work, and it is awful to think that this is how we used to practice, is that we would remove babies and make sure that a parent's got a way of getting on from the hospital, but that really would be it, and that the focus would be around a baby being placed with an alternative carer and how we would make that happen. The form that we've completed in relation to that process now is absolutely focused on a parent's experience as well.
The post-birth support form is really key, because that's something that we've never really considered before, and it goes into real specifics about, you know, how is mum and dad getting home, who's going to be there, those sorts of things. And even though, you know, we would think of those things, the fact that we're actually having those conversations really helps social workers.
Once a baby's been removed from a parent's care, obviously the trauma that they've experienced during that is horrendous, really horrific for that parent, and can be a time where a parent relapses back into drugs, has a mental health crisis, there's lots of things that can happen over that time. So it's about making sure now that our focus is absolutely around keeping that parent supported, whether it's through professionals or through their own family network. We've done lots of work with our fostering service as well, so that our foster carers, if baby is going into foster care, our foster care is very much involved in that process as well, so they're very clear about parents' wishes and feelings. A parent's got a lot more confidence over who's going to be looking after their baby. We make it a matter of course, it's only the exception that foster carers don't meet the parents. The form covers things like what nursery rhymes they want them to sing, kind of any special toys, all the details and things that makes a parent feel a little bit more comfortable about who's looking after their baby and the experience that that baby's having in somebody else's care. The intervention plan will be intensive weekly if a parent is caring for baby, kind of testing out what they've learned pre-birth, doing practical hands-on support post-birth around them caring for a baby. If baby is placed elsewhere, then that support is really focused on supporting that parent with their own issues, their own mental health. We're not kind of leaving parents behind when a baby's not in their care. We'll really intensively continue to work with them and make sure the right services are involved for as long as is required.
The baby does get separated from parents. It used to be where that's where all the support and help would end, but I can continue to offer that support. So if I've already got that relationship with the family, quite often I'm just that constant person that can be there. It might be just supporting them to go to family time, it might be helping with housing, getting contraception, whatever they want as a focus, that's what I will go with. And whether it's just a phone call once a week that they need to help them, move forward, or help them get some counselling, that's what my role is.
We're doing the worst of all things to mums and dads. How can we do that in a different way so that we can support them better?